Before we get to this episode, I just want to apologize for the sound of my vocals in the interview. There was a technical difficulty. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but hopefully it doesn't impact the listening experience too much. My sincerest apologies. Now, let's get to today's episode. On Friday, more than 1 billion people around the world celebrated the Lunar New Year. And according to the Chinese calendar, we are now in the year of the ox. In European football, for the last 5 months, it's been the year of the underdog. So far, European giants like Juventus, Liverpool, PSG, and Real Madrid have all struggled in their domestic leagues. But no club has disappointed their fans more than Borussia Dortmund.
We've gone past the 4 added minutes. There's the whistle. What a wonderfully enjoyable, shambolic game of football that was. Edin Terzic, though, will still have a lot to be unhappy about and a lot of pressure on him.
Following a 2-2 draw against Hoffenheim on Saturday, Dortmund sit in 6th place in the Bundesliga. And with just 13 games to go, the club is 6 points back of 4th place and in danger of failing to qualify for next season's Champions League. Today, we detail Dortmund's disappointing season and break down who will qualify for the final Champions League positions in the Bundesliga.
The current mood at Dortmund is a little bit damp.
Chris Williams is a Bundesliga journalist and DFL World Feed co-commentator.
The club are expecting to qualify for the Champions League next season. I think there's a bit of much hope in there than reality.
Before we get to their recent struggles, let's give this season some context. Dortmund finished second in Germany the last 2 seasons. Was there any reason before this season started that they wouldn't finish in that position again or even challenge Bayern?
Yeah, so I think if you're just looking from the outside, you go, okay, they finished runners-up to Bayern twice. That's maybe not a bad thing because we've all seen how good Bayern are. Current world champions now, of course, winning the FIFA Club World Cup. But you have to remember that a couple of seasons ago, Bayern were in what should have been a transition phase for them. They were under Niko Kovac. And the football was, quite frankly, pretty horrendous.
5-1 was the scoreline between Eintracht Frankfurt, Niko Kovac's old team, and his current team, Bayern Munich. It is the worst defeat for Bayern Munich since the semi-finals of the Champions League in 2014 when they lost at home to Real Madrid 4-0.
If you think back, they were easily defeated by Liverpool in the Champions League a couple of seasons ago, but they still won the double of that season. And then after that, they didn't start particularly well, Bayern, and Dortmund couldn't take advantage of that. So although they finished second, really, they should have won the title one, if not both of those times, because on paper, their squad was a lot stronger. A little bit different now, because it's a bit more mixed and a bit more set to. So Bayern have got used to playing with new players and players drafted in from the youth side. But at the particular time, the 2 seasons just gone, the gap should have been unimaginable for Hansi Flick to take over and come in when he did, and Dortmund should have been way out, and the title should almost have been won in the new year, and it wasn't. So, yeah, very disappointing really from a Dortmund side. 2 massive chances lost.
But there was nothing to suggest that this season they would struggle.
No. So this season, they should be challenging for the title. They kept hold of Jadon Sancho. They've got Erling Haaland, they've got Gio Reyna, Rafael Guerreiro's playing exceptionally well. They've got great individual talents in the midfield, from the likes of Jude Bellingham to Axel Witsel, who is unfortunately out injured at the moment. Emre Can can play there as well as defence. Mats Hummels is there. Marco Reus is there. Julian Brandt's there. This should have been the season when they really took it to Bayern. This condensed season, Bayern didn't really have a pre-season. They played all the way into the summer by getting to the final in Lisbon. They had very little rest. The games are coming thick and fast. This should have been the one for Dortmund. And unfortunately for them, they are way off the pace now, having already fired a coach.
When did it first appear that this season wasn't going to go so well?
Well, I think pretty much match day 2. When we came back, they were beaten 2-0 by Augsburg, a game that Dortmund are expected to win. And it didn't go too bad after that, but then they once again lost to Bayern, and then it sort of fell apart after that. They dropped a number of points. They picked up 1 point from 9 available in the end of November, start of December. And yeah, that's pretty much saw them fall off. They went into a bit of a bad patch while others around them got into a good patch. And then since then, when they've dropped points, it's coincided with Bayern dropping points, and they haven't been able to get in touch with that, and they haven't been able to keep up with them. And so really, they've pretty much thrown their own title aspirations in the bin come Christmas.
That was a catastrophe. That's exactly what Lucien Favre said after Dortmund were thrashed 5-1 by Stuttgart. And Janusz Mihalik is here with me because, Janusz, that catastrophe continued into today as Favre and Dortmund have officially parted ways.
Lucien Favre started this season as their head coach and was fired on December 13th following a 5-1 loss to Stuttgart. Why didn't it work out for him?
Yeah, it's a great question because he is a wonderful tactician. I think tactically his appreciation of the game is brilliant, but unfortunately for Dortmund, they've still got the ghost of Jurgen Klopp haunting the place. That particular brand of football under him was what everybody at Dortmund liked to watch. It was very successful, of course. Thomas Tuchel came in and it wasn't as exciting, but it was just as good brand of football. Didn't really get on with the higher echelons, had to go. So everybody is expecting a particular brand, and Lucien Favre didn't really hit that. And as I say, should have really won one of them 2 titles that were up for grabs in the 2 previous seasons. And he started off okay. His tactics are a little bit reactionary, or the way he had Dortmund playing was a little bit reactionary. And I think teams just worked it out how they could nullify Dortmund getting forward, just give them all the ball. Don't invite that transition in the midfield. And Dortmund struggled. And yeah, he was sacked after that game against Stuttgart. But that game followed a 2-1 loss at home against FC Köln. Cologne hadn't beaten Dortmund for a very long time. They then dropped points away to Eintracht Frankfurt, who at the time weren't doing particularly well themselves. And yeah, Stuttgart, although they're a massive side, big name in Germany, ex-Bundesliga winners not that long ago, they had come up from the second division, so they're expected to beat them, not to be beaten 5-1 at home. That was the end of the tether. Really, Dortmund shouldn't have gone into this season with Lucien Favre. He was never going to get a contract extension, so he was always going to leave the end of this current season. And for some reason, they thought it would be okay, but he just lost the dressing room in the end.
So what were the main problems under Lucien Favre on the pitch? Like if we were to kind of get into the details a little bit on the field, what was really going wrong with Dortmund?
So he preferred this 3 at the back, which obviously then left 4 in midfield and allowed players to get high and maybe play on the front foot. Sounds quite good, didn't really work. So teams just happily gave over possession to them and said to Dortmund, come and get us. We're not going to attack you. You can have all the ball, try and break us down. And they couldn't. And they also had a problem early on in the game. If it didn't go well for them, they sort of lost. So on the second match day, they were beaten comprehensively 2-0 by Augsburg. As I say, a result that should never have happened. They had a chance to take the lead early on. They didn't. And then it never really went for them. Same happened with Bayern at home. They got themselves on the score sheet, but they were comprehensively beaten in the end. Cologne, a game where they had a chance very early on, didn't take it, ended up getting beat. And the players didn't really seem to know what the system was. Do I attack? Do I hold? Do I drop? And that was evident. And then there was started to be some criticisms coming out from the players. Mats Hummels spoke about it. Marco Reus spoke about it. That maybe the tactics weren't the best and the players weren't stepping up to those tactics. So it just became an untenable position in the end for everybody associated with the club.
They replaced Favre with first-team assistant Edin Terzic. Why did they promote him instead of hiring a more experienced manager?
Yeah, another good question. So I think no one really was available. So if you look around who could possibly come into Dortmund and play good football, in the sort of way they want it to be played. You're looking at Jesse Marsch at Salzburg. Well, there's no way RB Salzburg we're going to let him go mid-season. Marco Rose, of course, from Gladbach. Once again, Gladbach aren't going to let him go. So they needed to bring in somebody who knew the players and could get them going straight away. Now, obviously, they decided to promote Edin Terzic from assistant into head coach. Now, I don't know, maybe there was a thinking, if Bayern can sack Niko Kovac and promote Hansi Flick and win pretty much everything, maybe there's a chance we can do that. Of course, Hansi Flick and Edin Terzic are a little bit different with their experiences. Hansi Flick, of course, helped lead Germany to World Cup triumph not that long ago, 2 World Cups ago. So his experience is a little better. I think it was just an opportune person to put in at the right time. They wanted an interim head coach. He seemed to fit. He's a Dortmund fan, so he gets the club. He knows what it wants to do. He knows where it wants to be. But unfortunately, it's not really worked out for the best.
Now, has Terzic tried to address any of those issues that you mentioned a moment ago?
Yeah, so when he came in, his first game after he was hired was against Werder Bremen, and he went to a back four, which seemed to suit Dortmund. And they played okay. Their style was a lot better. It was more attacking. It was more on the front foot, the sort of thing that Dortmund fans expect and the Dortmund board expect to see a particular brand of football. That started to appear, and they won that game 2-1. But then the next week, they were away from home again. They were in Berlin against Union Berlin. Tremendous side on a real high, punching way above their weight in the league, beat them 2-1. They were also beaten there the season before as well. And it was just an indication that maybe not all's right on the way that Edin Terzic wants them to play, because it's okay setting the side up, but defensively they're a mess. I mean, they're leaking goals from set pieces left, right and centre. Edin Terzic said the best way to not leak a goal from a set piece is to not give a set piece away. Well, we can argue the benefit of that and the likelihood, but they still didn't really sort out that back line. And that's sort of carried on, and they've dropped points and been beaten comprehensively by what you will call title challengers. And they've also dropped points to sides who are relegation fodder. It's been a real mess for them. And it's just a continuation where the club just seem to be in a slump, and they need someone who can come in and lift all of those players straight away. And Edin Terzic seems a really nice guy, and he knows what Dortmund want, but I think he's just being asked to operate outside the level that he's at the moment.
In doing my research, I noticed a lot of Dortmund fans kind of calling out the mentality of the players and the club, and even specifically pointing out kind of Hummels and Royce in that for their maybe even lack of leadership. How many of their problems come down to mentality and not maybe their physical issues?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask Marco Reus, he'll say absolutely nothing is down to mentality. In fact, he was asked that question back end of last year, and he wasn't particularly happy. He said it's a load of rubbish, the mentality in the club's brilliant. But you can see it on the pitch that if it doesn't quite go right for them, they get themselves in a rut. If they go behind early, they can get themselves in a rut. There's only that one game in the last recent form where they played Augsburg at home where they looked like they were going to win. Outside of that, they were easily beaten by Leverkusen, easily beaten by Gladbach, beaten by Freiburg. And I think it is a mentality issue for them because they don't look happy. And, happy players aren't particularly good players at times. And they are a side full of quality. It's just not happening for them.
We're talking about mentality. Jadon Sancho, recently admitted a couple of weeks ago that he was affected by that Manchester United transfer saga, over the summer transfer window. How much of an impact do you think that had on the team, or has it kind of been overblown?
I think it may have been overblown a little, probably more in the English-speaking world than it has done in the German-speaking world, because everyone that connected with Dortmund said he was never going anywhere. So I think maybe Jadon Sancho thought that Manchester United would offer the right amount, which would trigger his ability to leave. It didn't happen. He's come back in, didn't start the season particularly well. People said he was way under form. I think that might have been a little bit unfair to him because he's still producing the goods, but not as the level that we've seen previously. So whilst he was scoring left, right and centre and assisting all the time, People have said he's had a poor season. This particular season, he's played 26 games, 8 goals, 13 assists. That's not too bad, really. But people thought he was unhappy. And he looks a little bit happier now. But like the rest of the squad, he's not 100% happy. And I think that comes down to the fact that they're just not playing well. But yeah, I think he knows now. And people are talking about it in Dortmund already, that come the summer, he will be moving on.
We've mentioned numerous times how a lot of this comes down to mentality. Do you think this is something that a coach, one coach like Marco Rose, for example, who's been rumored to be maybe the next manager at Dortmund, can fix? Or is this something, more structural and systematic that isn't really solvable just by hiring a different manager?
I think if they get the right coach in who wants to play the right style of football, let's say that is Marco Rose, I think he would approach this Dortmund side a little differently. I think he would... if you look at the way he sets up his Gladbach side and the way they play football, it is this very, I think we can almost call it an Austrian way, because it's all coming out of the Red Bull football environment. So the way that Salzburg played now and when they played previously under him, it is that fast attacking, high, quick transition football. I think he could come in, but he would be up against the same problems that every manager has faced since Jurgen Klopp left, and that is Dortmund are really unsure, I think, about where they stand. Are they a stepping stone club? I think they would like to think they're not, but evidently they are, because players will come and then move on for a high value. Or are they able to keep hold of these players? Do they want to be a true challenger to Bayern? And that's always going to be their trouble. I think they need to realise where they are and who they are, but they need to work that out in their own minds. And I think that starts at the very top with Mr. Watzke and Mr. Zorc, and then it all filters down into the head coach. So Lucien Favre, before he was sacked, he thought that 2 second places were reasonable for where the club wanted to be. Dortmund want the title, but at the same token, I think they also understand that they have to sell players in order to survive, and that's really not a good mix if you want to win the title.
If Dortmund don't qualify for the Champions League, what could be the possible consequences?
Oh, wow. Well, just have to have a look at the problems that their neighbours have got in Gelsenkirchen down the road. Schalke didn't qualify for Europe, posted horrendous losses, around 121 million from the previous year. I think that was helped a lot by obviously the coronavirus, the pandemic, empty stadiums, etc. But that just impacted further on their lack of European football, lack of European television money, and just a lack of marketing and commercial investment. Now, Dortmund are commercially very savvy and they've got a lot of good partners, but if you drop out the Champions League, you're going to lose a lot of money from television rights predominantly, but then also players are going to want to leave. I think Jadon Sancho will go anyway, but if they're not in the Champions League, they're pretty adamant Erling Haaland will not leave. But if they've got some serious losses to look at, would that change? I think all bets are off if they don't make that Champions League 4th place minimum. I think we could see a few players go. Would Giovanni Reina stay? Would Jude Bellingham stay? There's clubs who are sniffing around the players. Guerrero, for example. Emre Can, I don't think would leave. You could probably keep him there. But everybody else around, other little sides in Germany would be trying to pick them, especially if they're in the Champions League. And there's a lot of Spanish sides and English sides taking note of players' availability all the time. So I think it could be disastrous for them if they don't make that Champions League placing.
Dortmund is not alone in the race for the Champions League in Germany. How fierce is their competition this season?
Yeah, so if we take Bayern Munich out, let's eject them and put them somewhere else. I don't know, just choose any country at random and parachute them into that league. Then the Bundesliga is the closest, tightest race for the title that you'll find in Europe probably at the moment. The clubs in and around the chasing pack, Leipzig, Wolfsburg, Frankfurt, Leverkusen, Gladbach, Dortmund. So they're the main 5 chasers. They are very tightly packed and there's a lot up for grabs, but it's all about who can catch Bayern. So normally you would say that the top 4 would be Bayern, Dortmund, Schalke, and another. This season, that's going to be completely different. Dortmund are currently 6 as we record this. Schalke are pretty much relegated, bar some sort of miracle. And there's clubs in and around that are overperforming, because they don't have the problems that some of these traditional sides like Dortmund and Gladbach have. They're not playing European football, so they can concentrate purely on the Bundesliga. And that's why there's more teams in front of Dortmund this season who give them a bit of a headache.
I want to focus on two of those teams, the two teams that are third and fourth in the league, and that is Wolfsburg and Eintracht Frankfurt, respectively. They are both flying high at the moment, having won 4 of their last 5 games before this weekend's games, and we are recording this on the Friday. What is driving each team's respective success?
Okay, well, I'll probably start with Wolfsburg. So, great side. Won the Bundesliga not that long ago. I think 3-4 seasons ago, they had the same wage budget as Atletico Madrid. Kevin De Bruyne came from there. They've had historically good players. So I know they're backed by Volkswagen, and it's a very small city, but they are one of Germany's big sides. But under Oliver Glasner this season, without wishing them any disrespect, when the season started, they were probably the dullest side you could watch in the Bundesliga. 4 draws up till match day 4. After that, started to kick on. And I think maybe Oliver Glasner was just trying to sort out that back line, trying to make them not leak goals, and then he would look at how to get the goals at the other end. And they've started to come. And yeah, you're quite right. Their recent performance has just been tremendous, and they're one of the most informed sides in Germany. Their backline is great. They've got an underrated goalkeeper, and they've got Wout Weghorst up front, who just everything he touches seems to be a goal.
Inspeelbal naar Weghorst. Weghorst, de hoek is lastig, maar wat een klasse goal van Wout Weghorst, zeg. Dit zijn die balletjes waar hij al 90 minuten lang op loert. En dan komt zo'n balletje er en dan is hij ook wel perfect aanwezig, zeg. Wout Weghorst.
And they're playing a nice brand of football. It's not that exciting, but it gets you goals. And yeah, they're there on merit. I think once we get to match day 20, you're not third in the league by fortune. You're there on merit. And that's exactly what Glasner's Wolfsburg are at the moment.
And what about Frankfurt?
Yeah, Eintracht Frankfurt, a side that should be, by rights, in the top 4 every season. And they're not. They've been outside that, probably due to the fact that they've had to sell players at times, and they were just pipped by stronger sides every now and again. But under Adi Hutter, they've started to get back to look like what they used to under Niko Kovac, which was a very hard side, very physically demanding side, but would play quick football and could score a lot of goals. And Adi Hutter sort of brought that back now. And of course, they've got Andre Silva up front, who is just in tremendous form, scoring goals left, right, and centre, like Weghorst, like Lewandowski. He's a top quality player. Luka Jovic is there as well now, and they find themselves in a great run of form as well. And I think Frankfurt could finally get into that Champions League slot. Frankfurt's a massive city. It's the financial hub of Germany. A bit like Berlin, it demands a big club. And I think Frankfurt in the Champions League would be an absolute dream.
Do either of their current runs feel sustainable to you?
Well, I would say, I've been saying for the past month, I thought Wolfsburg would tail off. We didn't really have a mid-season break, but once we had that little 2-week break in late December, Wolfsburg came back and they lost against Dortmund. I pretty much thought that was it. And then they dropped a couple of points either side of that. But since beating Mainz, they've gone on a great run, not conceded any goals and scoring. And they don't have any European football, any midweek football. And because they were expected to make those midweek games, the German DFL or the Deutsche Liga expected them to qualify for Europe and have given them a lot of Sunday games. So they get an extra day to train in midweek. And that's starting to show now. All the benefits that they've been afforded by not being in Europe have come together. I think have played very well. They've now got a batch of fixtures coming up as we record this prior to match day 21, where if they can take real hold of those points, they could be untouchable for that Champions League slot. They could cement it as their own by the time we get into mid-March.
The last time we spoke in mid-December, Leverkusen were challenging Bayern for the top of the table. Now, at the time of the recording, they sit in 5th place. What's happened to them in the last month and a half or so?
Oh, yeah. Well, Bayer Leverkusen were looking like they could be champions. And yeah, then on the 19th of December, they were beaten by Bayern Munich, and it all just went downhill from there. It was a real kick to their teeth. They would have finished the half season or the mid-season point. Technically, the half season's match day 18. We broke for Christmas after match day 13. Had they won on match day 13, they would have been top. Everyone would have said that they were the autumn champions, and they weren't, and they just went downhill. And they dropped point after point after point, and only started get back into winning ways when they beat a very poor Dortmund side in mid-January. So they went on a terrible run. They picked up 1 point from 12, and that's pretty much where they find themselves falling off the pace. And then even when they managed to beat Dortmund, they still dropped points, although it was to Wolfsburg and to Leipzig, two sides above them. Maybe you would expect them to get a draw there. But out of those 6 points available, they got 0.
What do you make of this Champions League race being so wide open in Germany this season? Are we just seeing a down year in terms of quality in the Bundesliga, or is it actually the opposite? We're seeing better competition than ever before.
I'm not sure if we're seeing better competition than we've seen before. I think what we are getting now is that these games, this really weird, strange season where the games are coming thick and fast, and there's been no traditional 4-week break. I think teams are tired, and that's why you've got the likes of Dortmund and Gladbach, who you'd expect to be a lot higher, because they're having these problems balancing European football midweek, traveling. Where are they traveling to next? The games are up in the air. There's a lot going on. The likes of Wolfsburg and Frankfurt and Leverkusen to some extent have had it a little easier. And the problem that there's been no real out-and-out challenger, and why that 7th place is on 32 and 2nd is on 41 as we record this, is because all the teams have dropped points when really expected they shouldn't. So I don't know if it's down to the quality. I think it's probably down to the repetition. And Bayern themselves haven't been brilliant, but they've ground out results. And that's what the teams below them haven't been able to do.
We talked about earlier the consequences if Dortmund missed the Champions League. To flip it the other way, what would it mean for either or both Wolfsburg or Frankfurt if they do qualify in the end?
Well, of course, the main thing would be the increase in revenue that would come into the club. That would be really handy for Wolfsburg, because although they're backed by Volkswagen, their owners have had to pull a little bit of money. There was the diesel engine saga where Volkswagen were fined heavily for incorrect emissions and problems with their engine management system. And that's a bit car-ish and a bit detailed, but it meant that Volkswagen had to pay a lot of money out in fines and recuperation costs to customers. So that was diverted out of the football club. If Wolfsburg could qualify for the Champions League, they would all of a sudden become a little bit more self-sufficient. I think it would help keep the players like Wout Weghorst, I think, could stay at Wolfsburg if he has a chance to play in the Champions League. And the same with Eintracht Frankfurt. It would be great for them to be in, to get that extra revenue, and it would help keep hold of some of their other players. Andre Silva constantly linked to a move with teams in the Premier League at the moment and also Spain. I think it would help them keep some of their players. They wouldn't have to go into the transfer market and sell some of the players in order to balance their books, like we've seen in the past when they sold Haller and Jovic, for example. They wouldn't have to do that because they would be guaranteed that Champions League broadcast money.
How would you handicap the final 14 games for the final Champions League places?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's just so wide open. I think at the moment, the way the teams are going, if Wolfsburg don't make it and Frankfurt don't make it, I think it would be a shock. Bayer Leverkusen could probably just scrape in there. But yeah, it's going to take some for Dortmund and Gladbach to get themselves back into some sort of Champions League race. I think the top two are done in that order, Bayern and Leipzig. After that, we're looking at possibly a 4-way fight for 2 places. So it's going to be so tight to call. And because the season's thick and fast and the games have fluctuated in quality sometimes, and you don't really know who's going to win and who's going to lose and who's going to drop points away from home, who's going to drop points at home, any team could go on a 3-game losing run and all of a sudden Gladbach could find themselves third, which would be very Bundesliga-ish.
Chris Williams is a Bundesliga journalist and DFL World Feed co-commentator. The music for this episode was provided under the Creative Commons license by Blue Dot Sessions, and you can find more information about those songs in the episode show notes. This episode was produced by myself and John McKenzie. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler. Thanks for listening to Football Today.